1984 by George Orwell. Part 1. Ignorance is Strength. George Orwell's 1984 opens with Winston Smith making his way home to his rundown flat in Victory Mansions. Breathless, weak, and frightened of the invasive thought police, Winston begins to question the party and their omnipotent rule. He takes the first destructive steps towards his inevitable demise by starting a diary, an act punishable by death. Chapter 2 introduces Julia, a young woman who works in the fiction department at the Ministry of Truth. Winston dreams about Julia and his mother, whom he has barely any memories of, and the Golden Country, a beautiful landscape that represents the past, or a future free from the party's reign. It's clear that Winston's rebellious thoughts are maturing. Throughout chapters 3 and 4, Orwell explores the horrifying state of mind control in Oceania. Historical records are changed and individuals vaporized to maintain the party's ideology. Winston spends his workdays altering records to fit the party's propaganda and begins to realize the full extent of its power. In Chapter 5, we meet Syme, a creator of Newspeak, a language designed to restrict freedom of thought. This chapter highlights the party's effort to manipulate language and cognitive ability and further underlines the power of Big Brother. War is Peace. Julia hands Winston a note confessing her love for him in Chapter 1 of the second part. Winston is startled, ecstatic, and fraught with cautious hopefulness. Their forbidden romance evolves, and they begin meeting in secret locations, away from prying eyes of telescreens and hidden microphones. Chapter 2 highlights Winston's and Julia's rendezvous in the Golden Country, where they verbally and physically express their emotions further into the rebellion. Winston confesses his prior thoughts of murdering Julia, demonstrating his deeply entrenched fear and loathing of the party. They also secure a room above an antique shop in Chapter 3, where they experience some respite and semblance of a normal life. Their unfounded optimism makes them reckless, adding tension to the narrative as they believe themselves to be safe from the party's surveillance. Chapters 4 and 5 detail their exploration of sensual pleasure and discussion of rebellion, further tightening the tension. The sense of doom is ever increasing. Winston reads to Julia from the banned book, Theory of the Oligarchical Collectivism by Emmanuel Goldstein, which explains the concepts of perpetual war and doublethink, key devices used by the party. Part 3. Freedom is Slavery. In the opening chapters of Part 3, ominous hints about the fate of Winston and Julia come to fulfillment. The pair are arrested in their sanctuary, separated, and taken to the Ministry of Love for punishment. During his interrogation under the malevolent O'Brien in Chapter 2, Winston learns that he was under surveillance from the thought police via Mr. Charrington, the antique shop owner. He also discovers that O'Brien was not a rebel, rather an ardent follower of Big Brother. The chilling reality of the totalitarian regime is conveyed powerfully throughout this chapter. Chapters 3 and 4 depict Winston's brutal torture. He is broken physically and emotionally, and he betrays Julia. The harrowing ordeal forces him to accept the party's authority. Lastly, in the final chapter, Winston is released back into society, but is a changed man, a character void of rebellion and filled with love for Big Brother. This conclusion brings to light the horrific capabilities of totalitarian regimes.